Some cause must have created all this. But what caused that cause? Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review an absolutely, just completely and totally delightful, awesome movie that I grew up with, which is actually turning or turned or whatever 40 years old this year, and I'm rather disappointed in the, I don't see any fanfare or anything from the Disney or anyone really about the fact that the Black Hole is turning 40 this year. It would be very, very, very nice to have a 40th anniversary Blu-ray release of the Black Hole. I mean, it's like no one's noticing that this movie is turning 40. I mean, everyone gets their, underwear and everything up in an uproar when Halloween turns 20 and 25 and 35 and 40 or whatever, but gosh, when the Black Hole movie turns 40, no one gives a rat's butt. And this is a PG movie, so I'm going to try not to swear, because I tend to not to like to swear for reviews of PG movies. If I swear, I'll just bleep it out. But Black Hole, I mean, absolutely amazing movie. I grew up with this. I can't remember how old I was when I first saw this, possibly 8, 9, or 10 or something like that. I know that 30 years ago, I taped it off TV and was watching it, kind of regularly 30 years ago or whatever, but I don't know exactly what age I was when I first saw this. I know that when I first saw it, it must have been 10, 9 or 10, because it was before I got into horror movies, because that scene where Anthony Perkins gets his guts mangled or rearranged by Maximilian's, revolving, spinning claw, actually kind of scared me and disturbed me a little bit. So it must have been when I was, like I say, 9 or 10. But before I start the review, I just want to share some things with you. This is probably the very first VHS release of Black Hole, I would imagine. I got probably in 2009 for $3. This is really exciting. It's, worth a lot more than $3 to me, because how classic is that? Disney, not that I'm a fan in any way of Disney, but quite the opposite, in fact. But, classic, probably early 80s Disney clamshell VHS here. There's the USS Cygnus, and a meteorite struck the ship, Captain. And you've got a VHS tape in the VHS clamshell. Imagine that. But I thought I'd share that with you on this review. Very cool. This is actually probably the first version I actually bought. This came out in 1998, so this is already 21 years old. Anchor Bay was the very first company to put Black Hole out on DVD in a widescreen and full-frame presentation. I will say, however, that it's not anamorphic widescreen, so if you're watching it now, on a widescreen TV or something, you gotta zoom it in. Well, there's a better DVD to watch now, but this was really cool to have. It was a big deal at the time because, of course, this movie is the wide aspect ratio, so it was the very first time I'm aware of. I probably didn't even come out on Laserdisc widescreen. I think it's the very first time in North America anyway where you could actually experience this movie in its original widescreen form, and it's got full frame on one side and widescreen on the other. Of course, this is, just 1 year after DVDs came out. So Black Hole ended up on DVD, pretty soon after the start of DVD. And then later on, Disney would actually put out their own DVD, which is actually, enhanced for widescreen TVs. And the Anchor Bay one, the 5.1 surround, actually, I think was missing the right or left or something like that. So that was a screw up, which is luckily fixed on this one. And it is in 5.1, and it sounds pretty good. I mean, there's a general hiss throughout the whole movie because of the analog, soundtrack or whatever, but I just was kind of bummed that this isn't on Blu-ray this year. I guess we still have some year left for it to come out, but I think if it were going to happen this year, we'd probably know about it by now. So on to my review of Black Hole. I mean, what the hell can I say? I absolutely, absolutely love this movie so much. It's, you know, obviously after the success of Star Wars, everyone and their mother went, you know, decided to, you know, cash in on the hoopla or whatever. And Disney, of course, was, you know, at the time known as the kind of just the old, you know, the company that just did cartoons and stuff like that. And I think this might have been, I don't know if this was their first foray into something that was a little more with the times or something like that. You know, the old people at Disney weren't really keeping track too much back then of, you know, what was hip and new or whatever. And Black Hole may have been one of the first projects by Disney to actually, you know, try to do something that was a little more, you know, popular or hip at the time or whatever. It's basically, if you haven't seen it, it just revolves around this crew of the Palomino. I love the name of this ship. The Palomino. The ship, you know, incidentally, is kind of a stupid, clunky design. It's almost like someone just put this model together in the garage or something. It's just this big drum with the, you know, kind of a skinny thing, and it's like 3 boosters on the bottom. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of cool and a kind of a dumb design at the same time, but it, you know, I should say that, I mean, this movie features a whole plethora of stars. You got Maximilian Schell, Anthony Perkins, Robert Forster, Joseph Bottoms, Yvette Mimieux, and Ernest Borgnine are the primary stars in this movie. And it's just so cool, being a fan of Psycho and Anthony Perkins in general, to see Anthony Perkins in this role. It just pre-Psycho 2, it's like, I don't know, 3 years or whatever before Psycho 2, or 4 years or whatever, somewhere around there. And it's cool to see, you know, it's always funny when you see Anthony Perkins trying to just do a straight part, and he makes faces, and you just say, oh, it's funny. I remember Dad and I used to, when we watched this, it's just like, you know, Anthony Perkins would just make a face and Dad would laugh, just like, you know, it's just like Norman Bates or whatever. But the story of this movie is we you know, starts with this, oh gosh, don't even let me forget to mention the absolute, this is actually one of my favorite film scores of all time, by the late, great, absolutely amazing John Barry. And also, I've subsequently got this, and interesting fun fact about this score, it was the very first motion picture film score to be recorded digitally. Even on this, what I would imagine is the original 1979 vinyl. It's very, very ironic, because it's a vinyl record from 1979, but it says a digital recording, which is kind of fun. So I've got this many, many years ago. I've subsequently put, you know, on CD and then ripped MP3s of. But that's the vinyl. And then just recently, this year actually, I was made aware of this. I'm going to do a separate video about this and review this. The Intrada, whatever they're calling it, you know, original motion picture soundtrack special edition. I'm going to do, after this video, a separate review of this, because that's very exciting to actually have every single, you know, cue from the soundtrack. I'm doing a great job at reviewing the movie here, and my apologies, but, you know, when a movie excites me, it does just that. It's very, very exciting. So stay tuned for my review of the, you know, the Intrada complete score CD of Black Hole, coming up after this video in days to come or whatever. But this movie revolves around this crew that is, you know, kind of like the Starship Enterprise. I think they're exploring the universe for you know, I think she says habitable life or whatever. I don't know if they're searching the universe or the galaxy for life. I don't know exactly what the Palomino is out in space doing, but it's just this classic cast of characters in the ship. And then you've got this Vincent. This Vincent stands for something. It's like letters that stand for something. Vincent is this tin can kind of floaty robot who's got these balls. He's got these balls on it, you know, I'll just show a picture of them so you can see. But these extendo balls, his balls can extend. I'm trying to keep this PG review, but I don't know if it's working. This robot is obviously it's like a combination of R2-D2 and C-3PO actually. You know, he's a kind of a R2-D2-ish kind of robot, but he talks and he's kind of a know-it-all and kind of constantly, you know, tries to school the Charlie Pizer character. He's constantly like, you know, trying to teach the youngest human member of the crew, you know, just whatever, you know, just factoids or whatever. So the beginning of the movie just features, you know, them just doing their space crap or whatever, and then right at the beginning of the movie, Vincent's like, "The largest black hole I have ever encountered, Mr. Pizer." And that was pretty good, actually. And right away, when the movie starts, Vincent shows, you know, the guy that there's a black hole, and then when they zoom in closer, he sees that there's a ship, there's an outline of a ship that's defying the laws of, you know, how could a lifeless derelict defy that kind of gravity? As you can see, I've seen it quite a few times. I don't know, but it's certainly worth investigating. My instincts are against it, Alex, but we'll go in for a closer look. Yeah, so they as the line indicates, they go in for the closer look, and they scan through all this history of ships and stuff, through, you know, Earth ships or whatever, and in this kind of cool hologram thing that even 40 years later, it's still pretty cool. It must have been really a cool effect in 1979. This hologram thing that's just floating right in the middle of this, you know, this desk area and in front of all the characters and stuff. And they deduce that this ship that's, you know, just sitting there over by the black hole or whatever in the distance is the USS Cygnus, this ship that was sent out. I can't remember if it was 20 years prior, you know, to the start of this movie or whatever, and with the same mission as the Palomino, to discover habitable life in space or whatever, I think is the line. And this ship also, you know, you've got the only female character in this movie, this Kate McRae, and incidentally, she's got this ESP bond, you know, with the robot, which is kind of creepy little detail that they use several times throughout the movie to communicate and stuff when all other forms of communication don't work. But her dad was actually on this USS Cygnus, which I think, you know, it either went out 20 years ago or disappeared 20 years ago or whatever. Like, the ship and the crew were never heard from again. So this movie instantly becomes this kind of cool, like, ghost ship story about then investigating this, you know, this completely, you know, derelict looking USS Cygnus that's just floating there, but they're just like bewildered because, like, the gravity in that area right next, you know, right around the black hole is so strong that how can this, you know, this hunk of junk just sitting there in space be just floating there? And then when they investigate, it's really kind of a cool scene, you know, because they're going by it, and it's like the gravity is just like tearing them to pieces and stuff. And then when they get close to the Cygnus, it's just like, and just like completely like being in the eye of a hurricane, a character says, the completely just zero gravity. It's just like, and then they're exploring around the Cygnus, which is just completely dark, derelict ship looking. And then they go like over here, and they turn on the micro beam, which is a light to look, you know, to shine on the Cygnus, to look, you know, check it out and stuff for damage or whatever. And then they're just kind of going from one end to the other, and then they go too far, and then they get caught, you know, they go too far past the Cygnus, and then they get caught in the black hole's gravitation again, and they're getting pulled towards the black hole. And that's just really cool, and it's just like it takes all their wits and all their whateverness to flip the ship around and, you know, engage them boosters and, you know, get back into that kind of safe, you know, gravity-free zone that's just floating around, you know, that the Cygnus seems to be in the middle of. And once they do that, then they're like, at that point they've got damages, and they're just like, oh man, we got to find a place to set down so we can, you know, fix the ship or whatever. Sometime, you know, relatively recently after that, like all of the, you know, the ship completely lights up. Like a tree on Christmas morning, as Charlie Pizer says, and the musical cue, I mean, the music's just great from, you know, start to finish in this movie, but the musical cue when the ship lights up is just like, oh my gosh, it just gives you goosebumps. And It's just like, what is going on here? And I can't really. I'm gonna try not to do a beat by beat through the whole review. It's kind of hard when you're absolutely passionate about a movie. But of course, they end up landing at that point. And earlier, Kate McRae sees, through zooming in with the high-tech futuristic cameras and stuff, she sees what looks like, after the lights come on, she sees what looks like can only be described as people. There's people, Alex. I know it. I feel it. And it's just a shadow, Kate. So it's kind of this cool mystery of, them landing on this ghost ship, which lit up and, and stuff like that. And they land on the ship, and it's just this mystery of, investigating this situation. And it's really kind of creepy. I know that, the movie, like, when they land on the Cygnus and actually start, like, enter it and actually start walking around, most of the movie takes place on this, the USS Cygnus ship, and I love the movie's just foreboding, just kind of, there's just something, like when they land on that ship, there's just always, from the moment they do, there's just always something off, there's something wrong, there's this great aura of just like, something being amiss here, It's just completely huge ship that's completely, seems to be completely empty when they first enter it and stuff, and as they enter the ship, doors and stuff open and stuff like that, so they just go through the doors, and they're like disarmed early on, like a laser shoots a gun out of someone's hand, a ray gun out of someone's hand, and shoots Vincent and sends him falling to the floor, and kind of, all this kind of scary stuff. And then doors open, and they go through the doors like lab rats and get into this, this thing, and get jettisoned, or this car, little tube car, whatever the hell you want to call it, and get transported to this other area, and they're taken up into this tower, kind of the main control tower, and it's just this big mystery. And of course, this whole time the music is just absolutely amazing. And they get up to the, this top of this control tower, where you've got all these humanoid characters in these, like just gowns and a hooded thing with this like plastic shell, reflective shell thing over their faces, just sitting at controls, just, doing this like really slowly. At this point, we don't know what they are. We kind of just assume they're robots or something like that. And Kate McRae's like, "Hello, is Officer Frank McRae aboard?" That's her dad. And then this guy, who played by Maximilian Schell, he's actually the top billing in this movie, turns around and he's like, "I'm gonna try to stop doing a beat by beat." And so this guy, this Dr. Hans Reinhardt, who these characters already talked about before, it's kind of, I think when they discovered that it was the Cygnus, they started talking about this Hans Reinhardt or whatever, and how pompous and arrogant this guy is and stuff like that. So it turns out the only living survivor, at least at this point in the movie, is this, Hans Reinhardt, and he says, all the other, I can't remember what he says, but there was some kind of something, and I don't remember what he says, but we'll just cut to the chase, and, all the crew, he said some spiel like, they got the, I don't know, they abandoned ship or something like that, and your dear father, Frank McRae, died or whatever. He was a great man. He stood with me till the end or whatever. And it's just like when you're watching this, you're like, what the hell's going on? Like, why is this guy the last one here? And then I think he claims that all these humanoids that are sitting at controls and stuff are all, I can't remember if he called them robots, but then there's the other cool Sentry robots, which are so cool, and just, late 70s kind of shtick, and they walk so robotically, which is so cool. And it'd be so cool to see a movie now with robots that are just, it's like they act like the cliched robotness, where it's just like this, and the walking is clink, 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 but, the face panel, the faces of these, Sentry robots are just so cool looking. And I'm just so surprised that, I know that they did a whole plethora and stuff of figures and stuff for the release in '79, but I'm so surprised that, like NECA and all these toy companies and stuff, you'd think that someone would be doing like current new versions of, the robots. And Maximilian, this is a robot I never even got to yet, but the Hans Reinhardt character has this Maximilian robot. Ironically, the guy's real name is Maximilian, and then this robot, his kind of, second, or whatever, his helper, main helper robot, Maximilian, is such a badass design. And it's just kind of like just hulking red robot with this just nasty, gnarly ass, just, super steel plated body, and this head with these, red evil, just slit eye, and frickin' just hulking. And this guy, this Maximilian just floats. Oh yeah, I can remember being at daycare, and I was just like going like this, pretending like my fingers were Maximilian and going dun 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 dun, like chasing Vincent through the corridor, So I must have seen this when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something like that. I don't remember the last time I was at daycare, probably at least a year ago. Just kidding. But anyway, yeah, so I can remember, because Maximilian's kind of has legs things, but he's a floating robot, just like Vincent. So it's just like dun 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 dun, So I used to do that in daycare because they used to make us take naps, and what the hell kind of kid wants to sleep in the middle of the day? I never understood that. So while everyone else was sleeping, I was just doing make believe, I was probably the only kid who wasn't napping or sleeping. I was just doing, I can remember being in daycare and like doing the spider from Explorers, like on the ground, tink, 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 and Maximilian, dun, 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 floating around. It'd be fun to see, not that they had security cameras back then in the 80s or whatever, but fun to see this floor of kids sleeping and me just like like going like this. Anyway, I'm segueing. Before I continue on with the plot of this movie, I want to also mention how great the space look is. A lot of times, most times in movies, when you have a space starfield or whatever, it's just black with just white, pinhole stars or whatever. A lot of times in this movie, in particularly, well, not always even around just a black hole, but a lot of times in this movie, the space starfield or whatever is really, really kind of cool and unique, because it's kind of, instead of just being black with white stars, it's got this kind of bluish, different shades of like blue or whatever, and stars and stuff, and black and just flowing into blue and stars and stuff. So it's not just a basic generic starfield like we're used to seeing so often in sci-fi movies. It's really got a kind of, some of the space shots of just the stars and stuff have really, really got a kind of a cool just appearance. And even, there's a scene where there's so many shots, like when they're just having dinner and stuff later on, of just the black hole in the background, and it's just so cool to see and the animation of the black hole is really great for 1979, and just having this dinner with this huge, windows where you can just see space and the black hole out in the distance is just so cool. But so basically what ends up happening is just this guy is just like, something's off. He's like, oh, well, if you were monitoring, this Hans Reinhardt says, well, we monitored all your, we were listening to you since you approached or whatever, before you approached. And he's like, well, if you were monitoring us, we said we were we were hailing you, and he's like, slight communications problem. He's just so full of crud, this character, and he's just like, something's so off about this, and he's like, communication problem or not, it took him an awful long time to turn on the lights. But what ends up happening is this Hans Reinhardt comes across as, seems like he's lying through his teeth, but he's rather hospitable about getting the parts they need to repair the Palomino. So you can kind of get that on, and the Anthony, I can't remember what Anthony Perkins' character is. It doesn't really matter. Alex, I don't know if they say his last name or not, but Alex is all like just smitten by this guy, and he's just so impressed by being in the presence of Hans Reinhardt that Reinhardt invites them to dinner, and all of the crew, I guess. And that's the dinner I was talking about, where the black hole can be seen in the background. And what ends up happening is, they requisition the parts for the Palomino, and Vincent ends up coming across this kind of you know, what can only be assumed as an older version of himself, kind of this more boxy looking version of himself by the name of Bob. And this guy was programmed in Houston, and he's got a, you know, southern accent, which is Biosanitation Battalion. I can't think of it anymore. Can you permanently rearm my lasers? Yeah, I can. Vincent, you and your friends are in grave danger. This is a death ship. Reinhardt only turned the lights on to prevent any damage to the Cygnus. This is a death ship. This is a death ship. But when he comes across Bob, he doesn't waste any time, you know, basically informing Vincent while the human crew of the Palomino is having dinner with this, you know, this swindling, you know, lying through his teeth, you know, whatever his name is, Reinhardt. You know, it's so funny that the robot is getting the truth before the humans do. You know, the robots are the Bob shares the truth about the ship, which I might as well just cut to the chase and say, which is really kind of creepy. I don't remember. I think basically the gist goes that, you know, Reinhardt was trying to, I don't know, he didn't like the direction things were going, and he mutinied or whatever, and he killed, you know, Frank McRae, and I don't know what, oh yeah, he transformed. We slowly find out, because there was this robot, these humanoid things with the cloaks and the thing over the face. There was one of them, those were generally assumed that they were like robots, but then of course Ernest Borgnine comes across one and it's limping, and it's just kind of a cool, like, little bit of a detail, like, oh, something's up with this robot, like, why is it limping, and kind of acting human in that aspect. Well, we find out that, you know, the crew that, you know, Reinhardt didn't, like, just, you know, purge into space or kill or whatever. He transformed, he, like, kind of lobotomized with lasers or whatever, and kind of turned into these these human, you know, order follower drone things. And instead of being robots, all these cloaked characters with the thing over their face are actually just they're all members, you know, former members of the crew who have been, you know, laser lobotomized. And when you find out all this details, it's like a PG Disney movie. You're just like, I love how frickin' dark this movie gets, and how it's just basically this humdrum. The overall feeling of this movie is just, I love this. It's just this humdrum. You know, the feeling of this movie is just this humdrum kind of dark, you know, I wouldn't say depressing, but just a dark, it's just a dark movie, and it's just so cool. Just the feeling of this movie is just so cool. So after dinner, basically, you know, Vincent has Bob fill all the humans in on, you know, what Bob just told Vincent about the truth of what's been going on here on the Cygnus and stuff, and they're just like, everyone's shocked, and you know, it's just like, oh my gosh. And obviously, you know, classic old Robert Forster. I didn't say that Robert Forster basically plays the captain of the Palomino. And I should also mention that, you know, this is just like beyond classic Robert Forster. I think this is the first thing I saw him in, and pretty much, you know, you know, subsequently, or as a result of that, I mean, every time I see Robert Forster, I just think of Black Hole. Like, it's just like they're inseparable, just those two things. Like, Robert Forster to me is yeah, I mean, obviously it's because it's the first thing I probably saw him in, but I mean, just when you think of Robert Forster, I just think Black Hole, you know. So it's so funny because Ernest Borgnine character, before he found out about the truth about Reinhardt and stuff, he's all like gung-ho about, like, well, let's just, you know, basically take, you know, Reinhardt and this ship back home, and then we can be heroes because we, you know, we took the Cygnus back, and you know, did the return of the ship and whatever, you know, it's worth a lot of money, this ship, I bet. And one thing that I forgot to mention is Reinhardt, during the dinner, he was all obsessed with, you know, like the black hole, and he's actually, you know, doing all these calculations and all this and that to actually, you know, go into the black hole. His plan is to actually, you know, explore the black hole and this and that. And the reason he was able to float just right there is just they developed anti-gravity forces that enabled me to just sit here or whatever. But what I was saying before is, before Ernest Borgnine character Harry Booth realizes or finds out about the truth about the situation, he's all gung-ho to, basically take Reinhardt and the ship and the crew and at that time they don't know he doesn't know it's the crew, but takes the ship and Reinhardt back. And then after he finds out the truth, he's like, well, Robert Forster's like, well, we'll have to go with your plan. And he's like, what? And end up like the rest of the crew? Like, if they couldn't pull it off, what chance do we have? And I guess it kind of makes sense, but it's funny how just, hearing some information completely changes his mind. And this Harry Booth or whatever is kind of a jerk. And at this time, this is after dinner, and is like, Anthony Perkins' character, Alex and Kate McRae are still with Reinhardt, and it's basically like, okay, you start the countdown or whatever, and we're gonna go get Alex and Kate and bring her back to the ship, so we can leave. If we don't get back by a certain time, just go, because basically at this, not long after dinner, Reinhardt's gonna basically take the whole USS Cygnus into the black hole. He thinks he's got this, figured out all the calculations and stuff to make this work. So it's a kind of a time bomb ticking clock scenario, and it's just like, oh, we've only got so much time to rescue Kate and Alex and stuff, and get off of this ship before he takes the Cygnus and all of us into the black hole, which would, result in certain death or whatever. So they go up there to try to rescue, Kate and Alex, and I think before they get up there or whatever, there's this, Alex. Oh, what's really cool is they use the ESP. Vincent uses the ESP to communicate to Kate, while she's up in the, the control tower with Alex and Reinhardt, that what happened. And it's so great with Yvette's frickin', acting, because she's just standing there while, over to the side while Alex and McRae or Alex, all these names, Alex and Reinhardt are talking or whatever, and she's just like normal, and then the face is like, as she's getting all this information, she's got to, you kind of emote this, go from just normal casual face to, oh my God, like my dad's dead, he killed all the crew, and the crew that aren't dead are these zombies and stuff, and she like turns around, and the music here is so great, she turns around and looks at all the zombies and looks at Reinhardt, and just like brought to like tears instantly. It's just such a great moment of this movie, and she's like, trying her best to fight back tears and just, what's it called, emotions. And Alex, can I have a word with you, please? And it's just like, she's whispering to him, the truth and stuff like that. And Alex goes over to one of these zombies and turns him around and takes off the face mask thing. It's like, it's just kind of this creepy looking makeup and stuff. And Alex is like, you told us the crew had left the ship. And it's so funny, Reinhardt's little bit here. He's just, the character is so insane, but he's kind of teetering on sanity and genius or whatever, that kind of line that's mentioned in the movie. And it's so funny how he's like, he tries to just lie. He's so good at lying that he just tries to lie his way out of this. Like, he would be dead by now. They all would be dead. My greatest achievement. And he's just like, he's living in this lie, Of course, he's been doing that for 20 years or whatever, the amount of time he's been out in space. And it's just so funny. And at that point, Alex finally snaps out of his just, bewildered, worshiping of this man. He's like, hey, let's get you out of here. And this is the scene that always scared me as a kid. He's like, McRae, or not McRae, but Reinhardt's like, Maximilian! And it comes floating down, and it's just like, and Alex holds up this book like it's gonna, read, damn it, like it's gonna be any kind of defense. You don't see armies, in ancient Rome like wearing books for armor, but anyway, it's just a natural instinct. All he had was the book. Kind of holds it out, and Maximilian's little claw goes right through the book, and they kind of pan up to Anthony Perkins' face, and it's like he does this. The thing that scared me the most about this scene is you don't see anything, but just the way Anthony Perkins did the, just, oh my God, he does that so well. Like you can see in your mind's eye this sharp, spinning thing rearranging his innards when he just goes and falls and zaps and down onto this thing. And at this point, Kate McRae, of course, just like old, pulp novels and cliffhanger serials and stuff. The woman is like the hostage of the bad guy or whatever, and it's like at that point, I think basically, oh no, at that point Reinhardt says, oh, Alex and Kate have decided to stay with me, you are clear for takeoff or whatever, and at that point it's like, oh, screw this, we're gonna go get her. And Harry Booth is left there to, like, with what's his name, Joseph Bottom's character, Charlie Pizer. He's like, if we're not back in a certain amount of time, take off or whatever. And I'm going to try to just not to do beat by beat and just simply say that, of course, they're attempting, what, what's his name? Reinhardt was going to take Kate to, the hospital to do the laser, whatchamacallit onto her, the laser lobotomy, and, of course she's rescued by Vincent and Bob and what the hell's the name of Robert Forster's? I don't know if I can remember the name of Robert Forster's character, but the captain guy, rescuer, and there's this cool, shootout. One thing I want to say about the ray guns in this movie, you know how in Star Wars it's just like this ray that goes from A to B. What's really cool about the ray, the laser guns in this movie is like when they shoot something, it'll just be like a continuous stream of light that goes from the gun to the target, instead of just being something that moves like a little sliver of light, or a little sliver of ray that moves, and then it's just like this, you know what I'm saying. If you've seen the movie, it's a different kind of a cool laser effect than is traditionally seen like in Star Wars and stuff like that. And actually the sound effects for the laser guns are really cool too. And I love the kind of you hold this thing and there's like a gun on top and then a gun on the bottom. I'll show you a picture so you know what I'm talking about. So instead of just a normal gun with a thing on the top, there's one on the bottom too, so it's like a double ray. The guns in this movie are so cool, and the ray guns are so cool, and the sounds and stuff, but there's this cool shootout between the Sentry robots and the good guys of the Palomino after they rescued Kate and stuff on their way back to the Palomino. And music, of course, just as always, just being awesome in this scene as well. And it's kind of the only part of the movie where it's like got this heroic theme. Most of the music is just kind of drab to go with the drab. I mean, really beautiful drab to go with the drab movie. But the only heroic theme, I think, is really kind of this scene where it's like dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. So cool. Little theme there by John Barry, man. All while this is happening, freaking crazy Reinhardt is sending the ship full bore. The Cygnus, which of course the good guys and the Palomino are on. They're making their way, trying to make their way back to the Palomino so they can blast the hell off before they fly into the black hole. Well, as they get closer to the black hole, there's this like meteor shower thing, and this classic, it's not a very long sequence, but where this meteor shower tears the ship apart, and there's this classic scene where this big popcorn puffball meteor enters this main area of the Cygnus and kind of rolls through it, and the heroes are on the bridge, and it's just, even now, even 40 years later, that little bit with the rolling meteor thing holds up really well and stuff, and it's kind of cool. And even though the Cygnus is getting completely pounded and destroyed by all these meteors and stuff, he's like, who cares, I don't know what the line is, full power, we are going through. And it's just like he's so determined and crazy and stuff like this. And there's all kinds of, maybe not that much, but a few scenes, of course, of I think there's another scene with the battle between them and the Sentry robots in the garden when the top of the ship gets blown off by a meteor or something like that, and there's this suction and it all turns to like really cold and all this and that, and the battle in the frickin' garden that's having all the oxygen sucked out of there, and it turns to instant winter, and they're shooting Sentry robots' heads off, and they're flying up through the hole and stuff like that. And then at some point they encounter Maximilian, and there's this battle between them and Maximilian, and like Bob and Vincent and Maximilian, and there's this really creepy bit here where it's like Vincent versus Maximilian, and his head he like goes clink like right up to him and like holds him back so the humans and stuff can get by. And then like after a while Maximilian's had it, and this thing flips up, it's like tink, and like hits, you know, Vincent on the head and twirls him away. And if you pause the DVD, it's like, oh my god, it's just obviously just blatantly designed to look exactly like a male anatomy part. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, this and it comes up like it looks like it's right between, you know, Maximilian's legs, and it's just like clink, this thing hits the robot on the head, and oh my gosh. So basically, after they rescue Kate, they're on their way back to the Palomino. You know, as I've been mentioning throughout this review, or the last part of this review here, the good guys are, you know, encountering all these obstacles. You know, sentry robots, Maximilian, all this and that. Well, the biggest one, as soon as they get right up to the ship, this treacherous why can't I talk? This traitor Harry Booth bastard. Basically, like Joe, you know, the Charlie, all these damn names. The Charlie Pfizer character is going to be all heroic and help rescue them, which he does. And then, you know, at the same time, this Henry Booth, you know, Ernest Borgnine guy, traitor, is just so panicky about the situation. And who can blame him, really, that he actually ends up taking off in the Palomino on his own. Right as everyone who, you know, all the gallant crew and Vincent and, you know, Kate and you know, all the remaining living survivors of the Palomino, just as they get back to it, this Harry Booth is taken off, and the gravity is too strong, and it's just going out of control, and he's being lifted out of his seat in the Palomino. And meanwhile, in his control tower, or what's his name, Reinhardt's like, blow at the butt before it hits us, and it's just like no. These huge, you know, cannons on the Cygnus just blow it, you know, give them distance, then blow it out of the sky. I'm doing kind of more of an accent than he's Scott or whatever, but you know, it's so funny that he's like blow it apart before it hits us, and then he shoots it. And then it like sends it on this downward trajectory to hit the ship. Like if he hadn't have shot him, maybe it wouldn't have hit him. So, you know, the ship's not only been pounded by asteroids, but now it's been exploded on by this, you know, Palomino. And it's just like, oh my gosh, at this point the movie just seems so hopeless. And then I don't know, I think the robot or something remembers that there's this probe ship that Reinhardt's been using to send into, you know, the black hole around the area or whatever, and take readings and stuff. So they're like, well, we'll take the probe ship to get off this ship, and they end up doing that, and they type in the, you know, whatever controls or whatever, and it's just like they realize that, oh my gosh, you know, it's success. They're able to get off, you know, of the Cygnus on the probe ship, and then when they take off, after they're off, they realize, oh my gosh, that this ship is programmed, we can't control it. And it's like, to Reinhardt's course, and he's like, we're going into the black hole. Yep. And it's just like, oh my gosh, as an audience member, you're just like, oh my gosh, after all this, they get a ship up, but it's only, you know, after all this, it's programmed to go into the black hole, and so it takes them into the black hole. And this is a point of the movie where it kind of tries to do a half-ass 2001 Space Odyssey thing, if you will, and it, you know, kind of succeeds, kind of doesn't, where it's just goofy, psychedelic stuff. And what's so ironic about the ending of the movie, and I really love it, the fact that, you know, they all, despite all their efforts to get off the ship and, you know, fly away and not get sucked into the black hole, of course that's what ends up happening. By the time, you know, the Cygnus actually kind of enters the black hole, it's just like completely destroyed and just, you know, smoking and just completely just, oh my gosh, in a horrible state. And towards the end of the movie, before they kind of get sucked into the black hole, you know, Reinhardt tells Maximilian, he's like, prepare the probe ship. I can't remember if this is before the good guys blast off. Yeah, it's probably just before they blast off in it, because obviously if the ship's still on the ship, you know, you wasn't on the ship still, you wouldn't be able to prepare it. And this kind of poignant scene where then, you know, after the Maximilian robot gets his orders, he gets into the elevator, and this big, huge, you know, because of all this stuff that's been going on with the destruction of whatever it's called, what's it called, the Cygnus, this big, huge flat screen TV comes crashing down on Reinhardt and just pinned him, you know, Maximilian, help me! And it's like he's gonna die probably, but in either way, but probably sooner if this thing doesn't get lifted off him. When this poignant shot where like the doors are closing in the elevator and Maximilian's head kind of turns around and the door's like shut, it's just kind of like, you know, you already gave me an order. So it's kind of like, the way I interpret it is the robot's like, I gotta, you know, you gave me an order, so I gotta, you know, I'm not open to any other orders until I prepare the probe ship. You know, and then he's like stuck under the thing. He's like, fools! You know, you've got all these humanoid, you know, former crew members that have been laser lobotomized, and he's asking for help. And it's just like the ultimate kind of fate for this jerk. I was going to say another word, but I don't want to cuss in this review. Ultimate, you know, perfect fate for this jerk who, you know, basically destroyed all these, you know, it's just so cool. And the music here is just so, you know, it brings tears to your eyes, honestly. How poignant that scene is, where, you know, all of this robot, you know, this robot and all of these lobotomized, you know, people are in no. This is what the world in space he created, and this world is not very sympathetic to his plight at the moment, and it's just the ultimate kind of justice for this jerk by the name of Hans Reinhardt. Great scene. So I got my things mixed up. I just remember now that, you know, then Maximilian, on the way to do that probe ship, that's when he encounters the good guys and has the little fight thing. So after that, then I think there's oh yeah, I forgot to mention that, you know, after that fight or whatever, Bob's like, oh, I forgot to also mention during that scene after he, you know, Vincent pins him against the thing and the humans get away, and his, you know, robo thing pops up and hits Vincent in the head, then basically Vincent just defeats Maximilian with the drill, you know, drilling into Maximilian, and Maximilian is sucked up into space. I forgot to mention that. And then you've got this sad scene where, you know, robot death scene, which isn't really done too often in movies, which is kind of actually, well, of course the music helps a lot. It's actually kind of a, you know, it's really short, but it's kind of a poignant scene where you've got these two hunk of junks talking to each other, and one of them is dying, and he's like, you know, Vincent, carry on the tradition, we're the best. And it's just like clunk, you know, Bob, you know, valiantly dies trying to, you know, protect people. He gets zapped by Maximilian or whatever. But so that's the end of Maximilian, and after that is when they kind of commandeer the, I'm jumping all over the place, but after that is when they commandeer the, God, this review's going on way too long. Commandeer the probe ship. So as I was saying, you know, now the dead, just the way it's presented in the movie, where this completely destroyed Cygnus and full of, you know, it's just completely, as it's, you know, being sucked in a black hole, of things just being completely just, the gravitational forces being completely just destroyed, and just, and the inside is just being completely crushed and stuff. And basically what ends up happening, the end of this movie is really cool and very surprising that Disney would actually have such a kind of a weird ending that's open to interpretation. What's really cool about this ending is it's just, you know, the music here is just so amazing. But what ends up happening after it goes into the black hole, you got all this psychedelic stuff with the crew of the Palomino and the probe ship and stuff, and then we'll just see whatever, and then we'll cut to this just like flaming, you know, whatever, just this flaming, then there's like a shot of like Reinhardt just floating in like this kind of red space, and his head comes up into the screen, and it's like him and Maximilian the robot meet, and then they dissolve into another scene where it's like, it looks like Reinhardt's head is inside Maximilian, and then he's like just this really cool shot of him, like the robot Maximilian on this mountain thing with his arms up, like he's the ruler of, you know, this area or whatever. And it's just so weird and creepy, and just like such a weird, I love how this movie ends. It's just like, then it's like camera's panning down, it looks like hell, but it It kind of reminds me of, like, I always thought as a kid, and even still now watching it, like it's just the burning debris of the Cygnus or whatever, and you can kind of see like shapes of what looks like just the those people that were crew members turned into the zombies and stuff, just on the mountain and stuff, like they're all gathered there or whatever. And it's just this really, really, really cool, just like what the heck's going on, like open to interpretation. The way I always interpret it is like like when they went into the black hole, like, this evil guy responsible for all this destruction and stuff is kind of like, not that I, go in for or believe in heaven and hell or whatever, but as a movie anyway. I mean, it doesn't have to be heaven and hell as the way it's described in books and stuff. But the way I interpret the ending of this movie is like, Maximilian and Reinhardt were like merged into one, and in this eternal hellfire of just damnation, and then after that camera pans up and shows, it's really kind of weird because it just shows this sparkly tunnel of light or whatever, and this kind of weird, just, it looks like a freaking, outline of possibly Reinhardt as well being sucked through or whatever. I don't know if the bad part of him is in, hellfire and a good part of him goes on to heaven. I don't know what the hell happens, but the one thing I do like about the ending is it's open to interpretation. After that, we do see like the crew of the Palomino, like, the spinning and stuff, which I never mentioned happened, but I'm mentioning it now, that was happening earlier, and the psychedelic stuff is like slowly stopping and just, coming back to normal, and we just see the ship, everyone's fine in the little probe ship and stuff, and we just see the ship kind of going towards this planet that looks all bright and cheerful and stuff. So you can either, there's two ways to kind of interpret this. Like, they're either just, Reinhardt and Maximilian went to hell and the good guys went to heaven, or like Maximilian and Reinhardt are just, the other way is it's kind of the same thing, and the bad guys, or the good guys, just kind of, the way I like to think of it now, being older, 40 years later now, is, maybe the black hole gave the good guys, maybe the innocent people, the crew of the Palomino, a shortcut back to Earth or something like that, and then the bad people that go into the black hole get sent, into the depths of, burning, you don't have to really say the word hell, just into this eternal hellfire. Well, I guess I said the word hell, but sent into this eternal land of just, eternal fire or whatever. But that's my review of Black Hole. Admittedly, I can imagine the ending, audiences even probably back in '79 are so used to, and it's such a shame, they're so used to being told, or having some kind of, I don't know, of being told exactly what's going on and exactly what happens, and not having to use their imagination. So I can imagine, even back in '79, the ending of this movie not being very, very satisfying to your average moviegoer. I find the ending to be absolutely just refreshing and a different, I mean, it could be said that it was just garbly-gook of stuff cut together that, they ran out of budget or whatever and just cut stuff garbly-gook together and just put music over it. But I do think that the way it is, where it's ambiguous, is a fantastic way to end the movie, and it's so different than like say the first Star Wars movie, which is now known as Episode 4, where it's just wrapped up with smiles and all this and that crap. It's just so much of a more, for me, satisfying ending because it is ambiguous and it's just kind of artful. So that's one of the many things I absolutely love about this movie. So if you haven't guessed it, my star rating for this movie is a whopping 4 stars out of 4 stars. Might be more like 5 stars out of 4 stars. I like it that much. I would rank it up there probably with one of my favorite movies. I just love everything about it. The production design, sound design, the score, as I said, is one of my favorite all-time movie scores, so that really helps. The cast, I think, is absolutely amazing. The look of, as I said, the space. I don't think I mentioned how much I love the design of the Palomino, and when the lights come on from the exterior, just the design of it is so freaking cool. And as I said, I'm so surprised in this this age of toy companies making all these toys, you know, they make so many toys, the same thing over and over and over and over. I'm just so surprised that there seems to be like zero interest from toy companies or anything to make, you know, new versions of Black Hole. I mean, you could make Sentry robots, you could make, you know, Vincent, you could make Bob, you could make, you know, Maximilian, you could make the Palomino, you could make the Cygnus. There's so many, you know, all the characters like they did in the 79. They came out with all these figures in 79 and stuff. There's so many toy options and toy designs and things you could make, classic versions, and you could, you know, make all kinds of this and that. So it's, you know, I'd be totally up for buying, like, you know, a freaking Cygnus model or whatever if toy companies, you know, made stuff like that. Now, problem with the older, you know, toys and stuff you can get on eBay and stuff is, you know, they're not necessarily that great looking. I did see like a bigger sized Vincent and stuff that's kind of cool, but the prices, you know, and understandably so, everyone expects way too much more money than I'm willing to spend on this stuff. That's why I'd be more interested in, you know, companies making some of these toys, you know, again now, and maybe the price would be a little more acceptable. But this is just one of my all-time favorite movies, all-time favorite movie scores. If you haven't seen this thing and you tend to kind of, you know, jive with, you know, my tastes and stuff, you really, really, really got to check this movie out. And it's such a shame, as I said at the beginning of this review 2 hours ago, that there's like zero interest from what I can see from Disney to put out a Blu-ray of this. Like, this, you know, the DVD is good, and the DVD, I'm glad it's like, you know, anamorphic widescreen and, you know, correct 5.1 sound and everything, but this movie's such a, you know, a visual delight that, you know, true that I'm sure the Blu-ray would show a lot of the, you know, the blue screen, make the blue screen shots look even worse and stuff, but it's just, you know, this movie is a visual treat, and it just deserves to be, you know, seen at home the best way possible, which of course, you know, some of you would say 4K, and not, you know, being an anti-4K person myself, I'm just going to say, well, I can't say what I want to say because I don't want to cuss in this review, but anyway, I think that about does it. Thank you very much. If anyone's still, I know that went way, way, way too long, and at this point I don't know how long this review is, probably a better part of an hour. If anyone's still watching, if anyone watched this whole review, thank you very, very much for doing so. You guys are troopers and fellow huge movie fanatics. Thank you very much for watching my review, and as always, we'll see you on the next one. In, through, and beyond, the time has come to liquidate our guests. Maximilian, help me! Help me! Fools! Listen to me! All right, we're the best.